This is Chad Parker. I am the Executive Vice President at Tupelo Children's Mansion and a licensed professional counselor with the Center for Apostolic Counseling. And we've come together to provide you with this seminar on parenting your overly connected child. This is specifically geared toward those who are parenting preteens and teens through this world of social media and gaming, and kind of how all of that interacts and things that as parents you should look out for, and maybe some tips to kind of help you navigate this period in your life for both you and your child. So the big picture, what is happening with teens' mental health? And this is a good question that we've seen a lot take place in recent news, especially with COVID-19. What we know is that between 13 and 20% of children in the United States experience a mental disorder in a given year. We have also seen that there was a 33% increase in the number of 8th through 12th graders with high levels of depressive symptoms, and that increase happened between 2010 and 2015, so that was even pre-COVID. We have seen suicide take the spot as the second leading cause of death for 3 age brackets now, ages 10 to 14, 15 to 24, and 25 to 34. And we also know that there is some correlation between screen time and suicide-related outcomes, and that teens who spend 5+ hours on devices were 66% more likely to have that suicide-related outcome. Now, correlation does not mean causation. For instance, when the sale of ice cream increases in the city of New York, so does the murder rate. We know that eating ice cream doesn't correlate or doesn't cause an increase in murders. So though those two things do correlate in the sense that they both increase at the same time, there must be other factors involved that would actually cause it. For instance, most likely heat and the temperature and the uncomfortableness of the environment is probably the cause that affects both of those factors. And this may be the very same thing with the screen time. But what we do know is that with COVID-19, and we haven't seen the numbers come out of 2020 yet, we probably will not get those until next year, but they are expecting that mental health episodes with teens, suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, and self-harming behaviors will increase about 25 to 35% across the board, and so that is pretty concerning. The things we know for sure is that teens who spend the most time in some form of digital media, they are the most unhappy. We also know that what they're using the media for has an effect. So if your teen is passively using social media, which means that they are just connected in the sense of not really being involved, but really more on the lines of trying to just get likes and follows, those teens tend to have a much more negative outcome. And then other factors that we need to consider is just the balance of media. How much time are they spending on it in relation to other things? What is their general health? How much sleep are they getting? And any other factors that may play a role in their mental health. So as a parent of a teen or preteen, there's no doubt that you have had a moment in your life where you've looked at them and thought, what were they thinking? Why would they do that? How could they have made that decision? And if you haven't gotten there, you probably will at some point. So this is the answer to that question, and then this is eye-opening for a lot of parents, but the prefrontal cortex, this frontal part of your brain, is the part that helps us to think ahead or to see consequences. This is the part that as we make decisions, we filter through that prefrontal cortex, and it helps us understand that, okay, if we do A, then very likely B and C and D is going to happen. We're going to end up at E, and then we have options. And so that's kind of how we process our decisions as adults. It's important to understand that the prefrontal cortex of a teenager's brain is not developed. As they grow, as they function, that part of your brain does not fully develop for females until about 21 to 23, but for males, it's not developed until around 24 to 26. And so when you're talking a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old or an 11-year-old kid, the prefrontal cortex is nowhere near where it needs to be for them to make healthy, ongoing decisions that guide them from point A to point Z. So because that is not developed, then it oftentimes makes a parent look at their child's thinking and go, I don't understand how you could even have thought that that was a good idea. And I've been there, done that, probably said those same things to my children, but it's important to note that when you hold a brain scan of a healthy teenage boy up to the brain scan of an adult male who has suffered a traumatic brain injury, those brain scans actually look identical because the damage to that prefrontal cortex for that male who has suffered the traumatic brain injury shows the inactivity the same as a healthy teenage brain. And so in some sense, when you're just looking at your child and you're trying to understand what they were doing or what they were thinking, it would be good as a parent to recognize that your child is like brain damaged. Just kidding. But seriously, the idea that your child can process this kind of information, sometimes as parents we expect more than what they are actually capable of doing. And sometimes it reflects on us. We feel like, well, I'm a poor parent. I thought I've taught them better. They should know better. We've tried to teach them the Word of God. We've tried to get them engaged in all the right things, and yet they're making these decisions, and I don't understand how they keep doing that. Well, that's because they're not really processing long-term consequences. As we try to set those boundaries and those guardrails for them, but they can't understand what happens if they go past that until they get there. And that's because in that situation, teens see their situations as absolute, that they last forever. There is no thought beyond where they are. And so this is why you see the dramatic responses in teenage situations when things happen that they don't want, or things that happen where they may be left feeling embarrassed or left out or alone, that it's just the end of the world. It's because that is their final moment for them. There is no, well, we're just at point B. There is a point C. We will move to that next step. For them, that is all that there is, because they can't process that through. With tweens, in their brain development, that's kind of the age at which we all begin to understand others' awareness. We begin to understand what their opinions are of us. We begin to understand that people do have opinions about us, and that's kind of where we begin to start caring about what other people think. And so sometimes I tell parents that this was just God's sense of humor, and the fact that He has allowed preteens to kind of develop that awareness. They begin to be concerned about what other people are thinking. They're very much concerned about what their peers are thinking, how people view them, and at the same time that they can't think beyond this very moment. And so decisions are made that seemingly benefit them right here, right now, at this time, without being able to consider consequences. So what you see is that in the teen's brain, as it's evolving and developing, you're going to see an increase in risk-taking. You're going to see an increase in poor decision-making. You're going to see an increased awareness of peer approval, which is going to be a lot more their focus than parental approval. And you're going to see this increase in absolute thinking, where what's happening right here, right now, that is the finality of it all. And there is no beyond this moment. So good luck, parents, as you try to navigate these teenage years. So there are some potential pitfalls that we need to look at, and I'm going to try to share with you some tips as well as we go through what social media, gaming, and how that all involves as your child's developing. So we need to look at all this considering all of that information that I just shared, okay? Their brain development, how they're capable, what their capacity is to think through processes, and then we'll turn around and hand them social media and say, okay, here you go. enjoy this. And so this is what we can kind of look forward to. There's this concept of comparison. So teens on social media, that kind of becomes their personal ruler. And if they can't feel like that they're measuring up, then that really can become a problem. And we even see this with adults. I think we maybe have all done this at some point, or had this thought if we are engaged in social media at all. It's kind of like, man, look at their lives. Everything's so perfect. Wish I could be like them. Man, I just don't understand how they have all that stuff. And it seems like we work so hard and do the best we can, and we don't have what they have. We're not as blessed as they are. But the reality is that social media really presents a very altered lifestyle. It's very superficial. It's very surface because, most of us, if we're involved on social media, we don't want to follow or be engaged with the people that are constantly posting and spewing negativity and all the terrible things going on in their life. We want to be uplifted. We want to be encouraged. We want to see the good and the happy things. So we follow the people that post all their fun vacation pictures and everything. But then in the midst of all that, even though we've made those decisions, then we see those things, and sometimes it becomes a comparison. It's like, man, why can't my life be like that? And if we as adults can fall into that trap, just imagine how your teens feel whenever they're not even capable of thinking through and filtering through all of that stuff. For them, that is the world. That is what it looks like. When they see their friends and they see all these things that they're doing and all these things that they're saying and the people they're hanging out with, the places they're going, that's it. That is life. That is all that their life looks like. And man, my life stinks because it's not like that. Plus, you throw in social media, you're looking at bringing in the ability to access highly visible and sexual images. And these are not even things that your children have to search for. They can pop up through ads, and Instagram, just through the search engine itself. It becomes very, very easily accessible, even with all the right filters. If they're utilizing social media, it's just a risk that's out there. And then the judgment that is brought, Instagram brings instant judgment, and the fact that whatever they post, their friends are very opinionated, as we've seen even with adults. People post things on social media that they would never say to your face because there's this sense of safety that I can say things on the screen that I would never tell you face to face, and teens are more like that, times 100. And so they just say what they want to say, how they want to say, when they want to say. And then of course there's the media metrics that are available 24/7, who's liking, who's following, all that kind of stuff. So everyone has this idea, what they're seeing on social media, and for teens it becomes a measuring tape. They feel like everybody has it together, that their friends are cooler than they are, they're better looking than they are, and it develops and cultivates this idea that nobody's going to like who I really am. I can't be me. I can't be the real me because it's not like what they're putting up there. It's not like what my friends are putting up there, and so they're not going to like who I am. So I have to become this person. And so you may see, which you would see this anyway in a normal, healthy teenager as they begin to try to navigate who they are. Changes in clothes or styles, attitudes, preferences in music, foods, that kind of stuff, as they figure out who they are. But social media kind of exacerbates that and pushes that more into a false narrative. You may begin as a parent recognizing these are not things, this is not my child, this is not who they are, that they're trying to emulate something that they're not. And 9 times out of 10 in this culture, it's going to be because it is something that social media has pushed them into, which is why it's important that parents stay connected with their children in this social media world. So how can you help? Take the effects of social media seriously. Understand that because they're not capable of really processing through these ideas and these thoughts, that yes, maybe for you it does appear to be just ridiculous drama, but don't tell them that. Be present with them. Let them know that you understand that what they're going through can be very difficult, and try to help them navigate that the best way that you can. Talk about the duck syndrome, which is basically, you're on a pond, You see a duck floating out there. It's beautiful, it's graceful, everything looks so serene on top of the water, but just underneath the water, that duck's legs is paddling as quickly and as hard as they can. It's very chaotic, a lot of energy, a lot of work is happening, but that's not what we see. We only see the beauty at the top. So helping them understand that not everything is perfect, not everything they see is just the way that it is, because you have to pull back that curtain of the perfection and help them understand, hey, there's filters that happen there. There's no telling how many times they had to take that picture, how many times they changed their outfit to get that picture. Try to bring in some realism to what things look like, especially if it's something that's upset your child. And then emphasize the fact that failure is a part of life. So, in a situation where your child may be very upset about something that was posted, something that they said or that they did that was taken the wrong way, or they received some backlash from it, help them understand that failure is not final. And this is obviously a good spiritual lesson as well. But even bring in a real life situation in which, hey, this is something that I did, in which I failed or made someone upset, but this is how it was resolved. Because remember, your child's not able to think through A to Z. They don't know that process. What is happening right here, right now, that is the final for them. So they need you to take them by the hand and guide them through that process and help them know, this is how you're going to get through this. This is how this will unfold for you. And these are the steps that you need to take. I apologize if I'm going really, really fast, but I am, because we have a lot of information in a very short amount of time. It's the pressure that comes with social media, the constant communications, fear of missing out. And this is interesting, and I want you to take note that probably within the next couple of years, you're going to see FOMO, which is fear of missing out, as a formal diagnosis in the anxiety disorder category in our DSM, because this has become a true and intense form of anxiety that a lot of our teenagers are experiencing due to their involvement with social media and gaming, their electronics. The tech tricks that are available, we all know. If you give a toddler a cell phone, they'll find out things in ways that phone works that you never even knew existed. They just are naturally inclined that way. They know how to do it. And we can't keep up as parents, but your kids know all the tech tricks that happen. And with all that combined, then there's just information overload for us and for them. And so there's a lot of pressure that is involved. One thing that we do in this society is we really glorify the concept of multitasking, being able to do more than one thing, wearing more than one hat. But what we know is that switching between two tasks rapidly will decrease performance. It really doesn't matter how good you do it. In most cases, if you split your attention, both things will not be at 100%. It's just very difficult to manage. And so in this world, especially now where we are, we give our children their screens, their tablets, their phones. They may have their own personal media at their home. And then they go to school and they're given laptops, given other tablets for homework, whatever that looks like. And we're all trying to figure out how to limit their screen time. At the same time, we're encouraging their screen time for educational purposes. And they've got all these things that they're trying to do, all these notifications that are happening. And now COVID-19 hits and everything becomes digital, everything becomes electronic, everything becomes a screen. And so it really begins to get overwhelming. It gets overwhelming for me, and I can only imagine how overwhelming it can be for teenagers. And as we try to run and multitask and handle all these things, performance will decrease. You'll see a decrease in grades. As performance decreases, then this can cause depression, because then we start looking at ourselves and realizing, I'm not good enough. I should be able to handle this. I look on social media. I see all of my friends doing all these amazing things, and I can't do it as good as them. So I knew I wasn't good enough, and so that just fosters, and we get caught in this horrible cycle. Of course, then we start feeling a lot more pressure. Well, then feeling pressure increases stress, which causes less sleep. And what we know is that 60% of adolescents view their phones within an hour before bedtime, which is really not a good idea. There should be no screens within an hour before bedtime if you want to practice healthy sleep hygiene. That's no screens, no TV, no tablets, no laptops, no cell phones within an hour before bedtime, because devices like phones often have a blue light that can reduce the quality of your sleep. That blue light tells your brain, hey, it's daytime, and so your brain is trying to gear up for the day, and when it's really supposed to be gearing down for sleep. And a lot of electronics now are coming with blue screen filters that you can turn on to kind of help minimize that, but it does just that. It minimizes, it doesn't take away all of the effects. And the lack of sleep significantly impacts mental health. It is probably the most overlooked factor when it comes to trying to treat mental health disorders, trying to treat those with depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, and the list goes on. If you're not getting sufficient sleep, you're not going to be able to get control of your mental health. And so you've got all these things playing into it that are affecting your sleep, and it becomes a horrible, horrible cycle. So, setting these limits for your child and understanding where they are, because there's these notifications that are constantly coming. They feel like that they literally have to be on call 24/7 to be able to answer it. They feel like they have to know what's going on. They feel like that if they start missing things, and their friends will replace them. They feel like that, regardless of the information, whether it's good or whether it's bad, they've got to answer that notification. Interestingly enough, science lets us know that there is an increase in that little positive hormone, serotonin, whenever our phones or our computers, when we get a notice that we've gotten a message or some form of notification, that peaks because it makes us feel important. And so really, rather the information is positive or negative, the fact that we get that notification makes us intrigued, it makes us happy, and we feel like, well, we've got to have that, and if we get it, then we got to know what it says. So how can you help as parents? Help them understand that the pressure is real. How do you know that their pressure is real? Because you go through it. And don't forget that factor, that you deal with it as well. Maybe not on the level that they do, but you've got to be able to understand where they're coming from. So lead with empathy, not leading with, well, I told you need to put that phone, I told you to get off those games. Lead with empathy and help them understand you've been there, you've done that, you feel it. You know that it's real. You know that it's hard to keep up with, and you want to be a support to them. And then as a family, and encourage limits to notifications, limits to how often, find ways to take breaks, set limits as a family. At dinner, we're all going to put our phone in the basket, turning them off, put them in the basket, and this is just going to be our time. We're not going to be interrupted. We're just cutting ourselves off from the world for a moment, and you'll be surprised at how quickly that safe place that you create within your family really becomes the highlight of everybody's day. So, myth or truth? Parents spend less time on devices than kids. Well, we would say, yeah, that is absolutely true. Parents do spend less time on their devices than kids, but it's not. Statistically speaking, parents actually spend about 9 hours and 22 minutes on an average with their screen time, whereas teens really spend only about 9 hours and preteens about 6 hours. So parents, we're trying to set boundaries, we're trying to set limits, and it really is going to be good for us to be able to lead by example. We need to be the ones setting the limits on ourselves. Our kids see us using it, and so we need to show them how to set those boundaries. And then there's always the drama factor. Lord knows teens are full of drama. They do not need help with drama, but really social media, gaming kind of exacerbate that. We've already got the concept of the mean girls and misunderstandings that are happening, and the way things are, because you can't read tone and text, and so the way things are read through text message, social media, can create all kinds of drama. You've got your cyberbullying that comes into play. At that point, people just being mean because they feel safe to post whatever they want to post, and then you enter into the world of sexting, and in a culture where sex is just so available to our children, and it becomes just really commonplace for them to communicate with each other that way, either through actual texting or sending pictures. It's a real problem. And so what happens when your child is facing these situations where there's just a lot of meanness happening, or they feel embarrassed or rejected, because it's a real world problem for them. They get mean comments. They can feel very isolated. If, God forbid, they get involved in sexting with other people, and somebody then shows a picture of them or shows the text messages that they've sent, it can become a very big problem for your child. So as a parent, the things that you can do is stay engaged, be empathetic, and be encouraging. Let them know that you're with them through this process. This during a time when your child is suffering from some type of cyberbullying, or if they've been a victim of sexting or gotten involved in that, and somehow that is not a time for you to just kind of turn your back and go, man, I'm so embarrassed. You created this hole, you find your way out of it. But they need you with them. They need you to be present with them, to encourage them and help them understand. Remember, in their minds, this is it. This is my life. I've ruined it all. There's no recovering from this, and they need you to be able to help them walk through and navigate that situation. And if their friends are experiencing that, what a great opportunity as a parent to one, teach them, let's look at somebody else's mistake here, the things that they did, the consequences that they're facing, and understand that this is how we avoid them. This is why we don't make those decisions. This is why we don't post these things. And then encourage them to be a good friend to that person. Let them know, okay, you know what? If you were going through this, you would want them to have your back, so you need to have their back. Be a part of their lives. Stand by them. Be a good friend to them. And then if your child themselves are involved, make sure as a parent you're collecting evidence, blocking the necessary people, filing whatever reports need to be filed, and involving whatever institutions or legal authorities need to be involved, should your child be involved in that. Isolation. So when within a digital world, it's very likely that our children become more involved with their online world than their offline world. That's what's most important to them. They lose desire to do anything else. You may see changes in their mood, their grades, their social circle. You may see an increase in secrecy and lack of in-person relationships, which can oftentimes be a sign that your child is involved with a stranger, and so those need to be red flags for you. So what happens is kids understand or begin to realize for themselves that it's easier to have relationships online than offline. Why? Because one, they're not really connecting with them on an interpersonal level per se, and so they feel less vulnerable and able to just share more information because that person is unseen. They're on the other side of that screen, and so it feels almost like a healthy relationship when in reality it's not. And online gaming in itself, because that's a whole nother world. They're talking to the people on the headset, they're playing the games, but they get lost in that virtual reality, and it kind of becomes an escape for them, which isn't always necessarily a bad thing, but what you can't do is allow that world to overtake the real world. Which is for a teenager is what's going to happen, because they can't set those boundaries for themselves in many cases. And again, then you look at the fact that because they can't think through things, then you've got this idea of there's no way back, so I give up. They've messed up their grades, or they've messed up their friendships, and so it's just let me be online, leave me alone. I don't ever want to be back into the real world again. How can you help address these underlying causes before taking away devices completely? Make obvious statements like, I noticed that you prefer to stay in your room lately. I'm curious what's going on. What can I do to help? As a family, we don't want to just spend a lot of time isolated in our room. Keep devices out of private spaces, which is good policy. Kids' phones should be charging in common areas. Family computers should be in common areas. There really should be no electronics allowed in personal spaces, period. Not only for safety of everybody, but even for sleep. Remind your teens that online friends are different from face-to-face friends, and recognize the fact that there may be some benefits to online friends, but help them understand that there's also benefits to those face-to-face friends, and there needs to be balance. Balance is always going to be the key word in this whole process that we're talking about. And then bring time online back into overall balance. So as a family, we're going to set limits as to how much time we're spending on devices overall. Be the bridge. Help your teen find their way back step by step. Remember, if they could get back on their own, they would, but their capacity to do that because of their brain development is not there. It's not because they don't want to. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because there's anything wrong with them per se, but they don't know how, and they need somebody who will listen, who will guide them, that's not going to necessarily judge them or be harsh with them, but who's going to show them empathy and try to guide them back where they need to be. So what to look for, warning signs that you need to be looking for as a parent. Your typical teen-tween development. There's going to be a popularity in pecking order, growing independence and distancing from family, which drives parents crazy, but that's normal, right? You want your kid to begin distancing themselves. Concern about appearance, especially in the eyes of their peers. Strong and swinging emotions, trying on different identities, a lack of consideration for consequences. Those are all normal teen behaviors, okay? When it's time to start asking questions, you may notice that your child has changes in behavior, achievement, changes with contacts of their friends. They may be anxious or on edge after being online, more irritable and prone to emotional outbursts, secretive in general, and about the time that they spend online, hiding their screen, glued to their phone. You notice that they may be becoming withdrawn and wanting to be alone more than usual. So at those times, this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to just jump in and do something, but it's time as a parent to start asking questions. What's going on? Who are you talking to? How much time have you spent on your phone today? Hey, maybe we should try this instead. When is it time to get help? Okay, we're past the point of asking questions. These are clear warning signs that there needs to be intervention either on the parental level or at the professional level. If you've noticed any self-harm with your child, expressions of suicidal thoughts or ideations, if there's increased withdrawal, you've addressed it, but they're just spending an overwhelming amount of time alone in their room, shut behind a closed door, or whatever the situation, if there's any type of increased withdrawal, then there's time to seek help. Grades are dropping, you've addressed it, but they continue to drop. There seems to be a lack of caring about it. Sleeping and eating changes. Either they're sleeping all the time, or at least in their room in the dark all the time, or they're not sleeping enough. Eating changes, both whether they're eating way too much or not eating enough. Increased times of crying, or depression or anxiety that may be hidden, but you notice as a parent things that are happening. Those are all signs that it's past asking questions. It is time to get help. Risk factors for suicide include a recent or serious loss. So these are things that, if your child's already struggling and these factors come into play, then you need to be proactive in getting help. If there's an already identified psychiatric disorder, if there's a prior history of self-harm or suicide attempt, if there's any history of substance abuse or other high-risk behaviors, if there's disciplinary problems at home or at school or in other situations, if there's any struggling with sexual orientation, if your child may be battling with their sexual orientation or sexual identity, then those are factors to consider. Family history of suicide, abuse, neglect, domestic violence, a lack of social support, and parental support doesn't always count, because as parents sometimes we get, it's like, I'm here for them. They know I'll do whatever for them, but in a teen's mind, the social support isn't you. They're talking support outside of that family unit. Is there any bullying going on? Is there a stigma around asking for help? Has there been an environment, either in the home or in the family or in the church, in which counseling has become a taboo thing? People who deal with feeling anxiety or depression, they're made to feel shamed because of that, because spiritually they're maybe not where they need to be. If there's a stigma around asking for help, then that's a risk factor. Difficulty getting help because of finances or language barriers, and understanding that males are more frequently to complete the act of suicide than females. So if you have a male that is in any of these situations, then you need to be proactive in seeking help. So your next steps when your child is struggling, always take a calm, judgment-free approach. Express your love consistently, a lot of love, empathy, validation, helping them understand that getting help is not a sign of weakness, but that is what strong people do, because it takes a significant amount of strength to become vulnerable to somebody. Find positive ways to connect with them where they are and the things that they like. Minimize conflict in the home, minimize conflict in their world as overall. Know who your child's friends are. Stay in touch with them. Talk openly about it, even though it can be scary. And always, always, always seek professional help. There are godly apostolic options available to us now through the Center for Apostolic Counseling. So don't be afraid to find help. There are some good news, however. Social media alienates teens, true or false? Well, 57% of all teens have made new friends online. So social media doesn't necessarily alienate teens. Social media can have some positive impacts on you, helping your child feel connected, which is a good thing. You want them to feel connected, but again, this goes back to balance. Teens can connect and find their people and feel less isolated through social media and gaming. Both social media and gaming offer opportunities to be creative, critical thinkers, and build 21st century skills. I mean, if you've ever played Minecraft, that's a skill, my friend. When used in balance and together, both social media and gaming can help families connect. Get involved with the things that they're involved with. Always, as a parent, your child should never be allowed to have a social media account that you don't have. If they're on Facebook, you need a Facebook so that you're connected. If they're on Twitter, you need a Twitter. If they're on Insta, you need an Insta. Whatever the situation, you got to be connected with your child. So be there. Show that you care. Get involved, stay involved, see what they see, and then find the fun in what's going on. I thank you so much for participating in this seminar. I encourage you to reach out, ask for help if you need it with your child. If you have any questions, if you want any follow-up, if you would like to contact me directly, you can email me at Chad Parker. It's ChadParker at Mansion Kids, MansionKids.org. Chad Parker at MansionKids.org. I would be happy to help you either navigate a situation that you're going through or get you connected with an apostolic counselor through the Center for Apostolic Counseling. So thank you again for participating. God bless.